Yeah, your volume's real low, but I can hear you.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, wait, hold on. Hello, hello, hello.
Is your mic off or what?
No, no, no. How about now?
Yeah, much better, much
Okay,
better.
because I think I have to put the microphone really close to my mic.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
you
yeah.
doing?
Good. How are you? Is it Adjo? How do I say your
Yeah, yeah,
name?
yeah. You said it right. It's perfect.
Okay, cool.
How's it going?
Cool. Pretty good. How are you?
I'm so excited and I'm really good. I'm just waiting for my guys to get here.
Okay,
Let
sure.
me shoot them a quick text. Let's see. Anyway, I'm so excited for you to have a chat with them because we are like a group of maybe I wouldn't say recently irreligious people, but a lot of us are like atheists and agnostics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I
I
sampled up,
just,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead, go
Go
ahead.
go ahead. Go, no, you go ahead. I'm actually interested. You're sort
No,
of what I'm walking into. So, yeah, go ahead.
um, so we do our part in like having that conversation about whether God is real and God is not. And
Mm,
so when I stumbled upon your conversation with Alex, it was a shock to me because I mean, the people that I know, we've had that consciousness conversation, but I think with you and Alex, it was just like, whoa, what's going on here?
yeah,
So I kind of want to merge that two worlds together and see if
sure,
um, there's something there.
sure,
So I'm really excited to see like where you're gonna take us, I guess,
sure,
because it's all
sure.
about learning, right? So I was just very intrigued, and I just wanted you to come on the platform.
Yeah, yeah. Just so you know, like I still call myself an atheist. I mean, I've been an atheist my whole life. I don't think that that's changed at all. I am also an atheist. So I think that what I'd say though is that I'm not a physicalist, and that's what's changed for me. I used to be an atheist and also a physicalist, and I'm not that anymore. So, and I think that's where the heart of the issue that usually comes up, especially for people that, like you say, maybe they were religious and
Mm-hmm.
then they're leaving religion or deconstructing. Um, there's a tendency to sort of take on a new belief system without knowing that it's a belief system, kind of, and I wasn't that case. I was never religious, but like I definitely used to be a physicalist, and I just thought it was sort of self-evident. So anyway,
Okay, so that means that you don't necessarily for you to get to. So what do you call yourself? Like a non-physicalist?
I mean, if I have to take a label, which I don't even like to do, but
Yeah.
I would say, like, to make this conversation make sense, I'm what's called an idealist, which
Okay.
just means that instead of thinking reality is physical, like a physicalist thinks, like that there's nothing but the physical, I think reality is actually mental.
Okay. So, do you think that to get to where you need to get to, you don't necessarily have to come from a worldview that God exists, and then to
No.
know God exists, and then like, do you think it's a prerequisite to go through that religious
I mean, I
experience
think if you
first?
are religious, like I think that like there's a process, the deconstruction process that can happen from there that will be necessary. I think the difference between me and a religious person is they think that there's like instead of thinking that everything just is mind, they think that there's a separate mind out there, separate from yours, called God, that created everything, right? And so, if you're in that position already, where you have beliefs about gods and various things that you think to be true that are based on a faith or something like that, there's definitely a process that you'd have to go through to deconstruct from that to get to either position, my position or a physicalist position.
So, what's a physicalist position? You
Okay,
believe
so
that? Go ahead.
no,
No,
let me hear
no,
what you think
no,
it
no,
might
no.
be
What's
first.
what's a physicalist?
Okay, so a physicalist is just somebody that thinks that reality is fundamentally physical and critically that that's all there is, that everything can be described by physics, basically, and that reality is itself made of this physical stuff. And it's just the interactions of the physical stuff that explains everything that we see in the world.
But you just said that it doesn't exist.
What do you mean? Like in terms of the physical? Yeah, like
Yeah.
if you have my position, I don't think that's true. I think that the world appears physical, but that appearance is just that. It's an appearance, not reality itself. So to make this like easier to understand, if you were having a dream, right? Like you go to sleep and you have a dream, and you sort of become this dream character in the dream. Let's say that it's not like a lucid dream where you're knowing that it's a dream. Like you actually think whatever's happening is happening, right? That character would say, like, I am a physical being living in this physical world around me, the world of the dream, right? But in reality, like, we know that that's not actually true. Like, all of the physical stuff that appears there is actually just mental states, right? And so this is the difference. Like, of course, I'm not denying that, like, all of physics holds up, like that the world appears physical to us, that we can take measurements and we can predict things that will happen. I'm just saying that that's not the ultimate base of reality.
But don't you have to exist in order to have a dream?
Well, your mind has to exist, right? Like, so there needs to be a mind to have a dream, right?
Okay.
And so this is what I would say, like, your question on the background, what is consciousness?
Yeah.
I would say that is the base. Like, that is what is fundamentally there. And then all of the different appearances within consciousness are just that mind doing things.
How many appearances are there?
Infinite, right? Like all of the things you see around you, right? Like anything that we observe, right, is an appearance in consciousness.
Consciousness. Okay, so you mentioned physics, right? Like the only physics I know is the one that I just learned in school. So
No.
Are you like an expert in physics? And
So what we're talking about here is actually a philosophical question. It's called an ontology, like what we think reality is, right? Science, I'm an engineer, so like I'm not a scientist per se, but like I basically have a STEM degree and I worked in semiconductor design my whole life. But this isn't a scientific question. Like, what's important to point out here is we're talking about what is reality. And what science does is science predicts the behavior of nature as it appears on our screen of perception. It's like predicts the future. Like, these conditions start and then I will get this. And that's not actually answering what reality it is. And so science, this is a big confusion a lot of people have. They think that the purpose of science is to find out what reality is. And it's just not the case. Okay, so that doesn't mean science is wrong in any way, by the way. I want to be very clear. Like, all of science is totally fine. If you have a worldview where science is not fine, like if science doesn't fit, it's your worldview that needs to change, not the science.
So if I understand correctly, science sort of explains
It explains how reality looks to us, yes, right? So in order for science to operate, we need to take data. We always take data through our sense perceptions. Yeah. That's how we collect scientific data. And so what it does is science describes what we perceive. Okay, so
you're saying that science is not the greatest thing, then, or there's
what I'm saying is that it's limited. It's like this, like how do I use a good analogy here? I mean, always when we observe something, we're doing that through our sense perception, through consciousness, through mental interpretation. We are looking at things, right, and measuring them. And so that means that science is limited to that which can be measured, that which shows up on the screen of perception, what we call the physical world, right? Consciousness is not a thing that shows up on the screen of perception. Consciousness is the screen of perception.
Why are you using the word limited? Because if you use the word limited, then it makes me think that there's an opposite of unlimitedness that hasn't yet to be discovered. So I'm just a bit like, why are you using the word limited?
I'm using the word limited in the sense that the amount, like in this way, science isn't the only and complete method to gain all knowledge about reality. It's limited by its method in the sense that what science requires is the ability to observe the phenomena being studied.
I suppose, but that's all we have.
That is all we have in terms of looking at things in the world, right? We have only our sense perceptions, right? And so there are things, though, that we know to exist that don't show up on the screen of perception. One of those things is mind, is consciousness.
So you don't have a solution then, because
what solution? If by solution you mean I don't have a physical explanation for consciousness, that's right, because there isn't one.
So then what are we doing?
Well, no, it's very valid to do science. Like science helps us a lot, right? It builds our technology. The fact that we're talking on this phone, we have the camera, we have everything here, all this technology that got developed. That's all very useful, right? So I'm not trying to denigrate science in any way. Science is incredibly useful at what it does, but it gets to be a problem when we think it does more than it does. And that's kind of what we suffer from.
Who thinks
Most
that?
people that think reality is fundamentally physical. Because then they think science is telling them what reality is. And we run into all kinds of weird things. Like when we rip stuff apart far enough, we're like, wait a minute, like these two particles like seem to be in two places at once. How is this possible? Right? And we go, well, it can't be possible because that's like, that's reality. It's physical. And therefore, this doesn't make any sense. And they call it spooky or weird or whatever, right? And it's weird because it goes against our intuition about what reality is. So I'm not shitting on science at all. Like science is great.
I feel that whenever there's someone who has a new theory, there's always this thing of like trashing or like invalidating what we have in order to like uplift whatever it is that they want to introduce to us. And I feel like that's, I mean, yes, you've said it multiple times that you're not trying to say that science is not good or it's not like common sense or
useful,
yeah.
Incredibly powerful,
but
very necessary.
If consciousness is not something that any of us can, is it acquire or experience, then why?
We definitely can experience consciousness, right? But we just can't study it with science because to study it, we'd have to be able to measure it.
Yeah,
that's what science requires,
and
it's just it is what measures, though. That's the problem. So it's like trying to look at your eye with your eye. Like that's not something you can do.
So if something cannot be measured, something cannot be physical, and then something cannot replicate.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Like we know consciousness exists.
Because I think what you're doing is this is just someone describing God, really. God is someone that you cannot see, you cannot touch, you cannot but then they exist and they do all these like miracles. And it sounds like that's what you're describing.
Except for that God, as described in religion, right? There's no evidence for such a thing.
Yeah, forget about a God of religion, right? Like you and I are not religious, right?
Right.
But is the idea that there is an unseen force that contributes?
There is, you're conscious, right? Like, consciousness exists. It's one thing that can't be denied, right?
That's what I'm saying. That is the same thing as me saying that God exists too. Like
no, but this exists. Like I'm asking you personally. Like that you're conscious, right?
Consciousness is not something physical to tell me that it exists.
If you weren't conscious, could we be having this conversation?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? Like there would be no conversation. You wouldn't be aware of anything.
But is it consciousness that's making it happen?
Yes, that's what we call consciousness, that in which all these things are appearing, right? Like when I ask you, are you conscious? If you're going to be honest, you're going to say yes, right?
I don't want to give you like easy answers. I think that's what it is. I'm trying to play like.
But that it would be a completely ridiculous thing for you to say that you're not sure if you're conscious or not. Like we actually have a thing for this. We put up because to me this is like denying the most obvious thing in your experience.
No, but it's just a word. It's nothing. And I.
It's not just a word. It's not just a word.
I also have this theory that nothing matters, and it's nothing. Like it's nothing. So you can hold.
I agree with you. It's not a thing. Things exist in consciousness. So I agree with you that it's not a thing, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Consciousness certainly exists.
But you said it cannot be traced, and if it cannot be traced, it
can be experienced directly. It can be experienced directly, and in your experience right now, you're having an experience of consciousness.
So how come it cannot be traced? How come science?
It can't be measured. It can't be measured.
Right. So how come science cannot be measured? I mean,
it can't be measured because consciousness. Okay, here's why. Because a scientist going to measure consciousness is like a character in a movie going within the world of the movie to try to find the screen. It doesn't exist there.
Say it again.
Okay, so if you want a scientist going to measure consciousness, right, is like a character in a movie searching within the world of the movie trying to find the screen.
What if I'm doing that behind the scenes of the movie?
You're not in a position to get behind consciousness. What is behind that? There is nothing behind. Like everything in the movie appears on the screen. There's no outside of the screen.
I'm saying that the movie was shot, correct?
Okay, you're taking the analogy a little too far now. No, that's not what I mean by this. What I'm trying to say is like from this proposition, this metaphor of like a person that's a character in a movie, like the actual thing itself. Without the screen, the person doesn't exist, neither does the rest of the movie, right? So it's the screen that's fundamental. And then all of the appearances on the screen require the screen. It's the same, the movie can go away and the screen's still there. So like this is, the point I'm trying to make is though, like you say, why isn't it measurable, right? It's not physical. That's why it's not measurable. Measurable things have to show up to sense perception. They have to be viewable with your eyes, ears, touch, taste, smell, all those things. That's how we take measurements. And consciousness doesn't come to us that way. We know it directly.
I'm sorry, but I don't think it exists.
If you don't think,
I mean,
you can
wait,
say,
wait,
I
no,
don't
no,
think
no, no,
consciousness.
wait,
This is
hold on,
Daniel
hold on,
Dennett's
hold on,
position.
hold on, hold on. I just heard how it sounded. Hold on. I'm just trying to take it all in.
Look, it's the only thing that can't be an illusion, because even if it were an illusion, that illusion would have to appear to consciousness in order for the illusion to exist. So Daniel Dennett, a very famous philosopher, right, tries to sort of go down this road, and some other people have. And like, it's honestly kind of laughed at in philosophy circles. If you deny consciousness, you're kind of self-denying. You're denying your own experience. And you can say that the conversation would sort of end here, though. Like, if that's the case, if you really think consciousness doesn't exist, I know I used to have a little thing where I would do where people would say, I would ask them, "Are you conscious?" And if they said no, or I don't know, I would just say, "Oh, okay, well, I only talk to people that know that they're conscious, like not like zombies. So like, I guess we have nothing left to say, you know." So this is a point where I can't bend on. Like, I'm not going to be like, well, maybe it's true that you're not conscious, because it's just incoherent to me.
So what is behind? Why isn't there something behind consciousness?
Well, you just can't get behind it, right? Like anything that you want to define would have to appear in consciousness. It's sort of like saying, let's take this out of like the mental space and just talk about like physical space, right? Like without physical space for particles to appear in, there would be no particles. So consciousness is like that. It's like the space in which things exist, right? Like, it's not that, like, it doesn't go both ways. Like, you don't need the particles to have the space. You need the space to have something called particles. Another way to think about this, or just to say this too, like, look, there's sort of like, this assumption. There's two things. Like you could say, you're saying like, oh, I don't know if consciousness exists, right? Because I can't measure it. And the idealist would say, well, look, physicalism, which basically says matter is all that exists, that's actually what we don't know to exist. Because what you're saying, if you're a physicalist, is that exists, the matter that we measure exists out there prior to consciousness, because it's what generates consciousness. And so how do we know that? To me, that's claiming like a God belief. There's this something out there that we can never find and that can't even really be described, but it exists. And whereas consciousness is something we know directly. It's where we all start.
But we all experience life differently. And so is that what makes it infinite?
I mean, we experience different contents of consciousness, right? So we definitely have different experiences. Like, this is the other thing to remember. Like, all of science works here, right? Like, I'm not denying any of that. Like, so all I'm saying is the frame in which to view that is different. So yeah, no, of course, like everyone has different contents of their consciousness. Like, you are not you don't know what my thoughts are. You don't know what I'm experiencing right now. I don't know what you're experiencing right now. We experience all kinds of different states within consciousness, right? So that's all true.
Okay, sure. So that means that we cannot have like a hierarchy of what's a greater consciousness versus what's not, then, right? Because if we cannot measure humans, then we cannot measure that of non-living items or non-living things. So I
mean, I think we can only guess that. Actually, the only thing you know for sure, right, is that you're conscious. You don't even know that I'm conscious for sure, right? However, I think we probably both agree.
I answered you and you said you only speak with people who know that they're conscious.
No, but you do know that you're conscious. Like, there's no doubt that you are conscious, like for yourself. Like, every person themselves. And this is a position called solipsism. Like, some people will say, that's all I know, so that's all I'm going to think, that I'm the only conscious being, and everything else is like existing only within my consciousness, right? That's a position called solipsism, right? It's a stupid position, but it's a position called solipsism. And so, but the point is, it's the most skeptical position that you can have, because you are saying, I'm only going to stick with the thing that I know for sure, which is that I'm conscious, like like meaning myself. But I have to assume that you're conscious, right? That Adjo is conscious also, right?
Right.
And I don't know it for sure because I don't have you, like, I'm not inside your mind. I don't have your experience. Like, technically you could be like a zombie acting like you're conscious, but
you know I'm
but like,
not.
I'm going to assume. Why do I assume? I assume because you act exactly like me and you look like exactly like me. And if I take you apart,
So okay, so what other option would I be then? Because you know that I'm not a zombie, right? So
right.
you have to have
So like,
had thought about something else that I could be
well, no, I
other
think
than a
that
human
that
being.
you're a conscious being like I am, right? Like, you're exactly the same as me. You are
I'm human.
exactly, you're human, right?
Okay.
And right, and so, like, of course, we should assume all other humans are conscious too, right? You would every physicalist would agree with this as well, like, right? Like, there's no reason to not assume. Like, so far, the physicalist agrees. Like, I am conscious. I also think you are conscious, and I, like, to a very high degree of certainty, right? And we can go down like the chain of like animals. Like, is your dog conscious? Yeah, it seems to be also made of the same stuff as me and the same kind of configuration.
I think rocks and leaves are conscious.
Okay, well, that's a little different. So that for that, you're going to need a justification, right? Because, like, the justification I give for, like, why you're conscious, right, is that one, you behave like I do, but two, you also critically exactly the same as me in terms of function and material, right? Like, so all of the processes that you have, you fight the second law of thermodynamics by consuming, energy in the form of other living things. Like, all of the stuff of life, right, is the same between you and I. And so is our makeup, basically. But if you're going to say a rock is conscious, right, what are you going to base that off of? Its behavior and its form aren't the same as yours.
I define consciousness as one that interacts with the environment, and rocks seem to interact with the environment. When it's cold, you could touch it and it's cold. When it's hot, you could touch a rock and it's hot.
But does the rock feel cold itself? Like, you're saying you can touch it. So I agree, you're conscious, right? And you are experiencing the cold rock.
Yeah.
Do you think that the rock, when it's outside,
Yes, I think
itself feels
yes,
cold?
Yes, because I'm sure when you put it under a microscope or something, like, it is interacting with the cold, like it is moving a certain way. Or have you ever seen, like, fossils in a rock? Like, those two words are merging together. Or sounds or waves, they move with the wind, or the wind
All of
moves
those
it.
things,
I don't know.
like those are experiences. Like, sounds, right, exist because you have ears and can hear them, right? And you have an experience of hearing, right?
I'm saying that the rock can still react to frequencies.
Yeah,
if
you can.
there's a
Sure. There's
push.
no. I don't think anyone's doubting that. Like, if you hit the rock with a hammer, it'll break in half or break into pieces, right?
Or it doesn't
I
have
don't
to
think that that's an
doesn't have to
indication that
necessarily
it.
interact with a human. It can interact with just nature in general.
Sure. It can roll down the mountain
So I'm
and
saying
fall off
that
the mountain.
I describe whatever interact with nature as conscious, because it is receiving information and expressing something, because of that experience.
Well, that would be an idiosyncratic definition to yourself. Philosophy defines consciousness as something it's like to be. So if something is conscious, there's something it's like. There's an inner experience that thing is having that is unique to it, that only it has some private inner life, right? Like, some experience itself. So I think we'd just be talking about different things. If you want to define consciousness as a thing has consciousness if it interacts, that just means everything is conscious.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But, like, that's like kind of like totally denudes the word of any meaning.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just, again, it's the observation of it. You cannot, because I have to receive the words that you're saying to me, understand what you're saying, and I have to respond according to that. Because I am conscious, I am receiving whatever message that is. And I think that other species, other things in this world does the
I think
same
it's
thing.
reasonable. I think it's reasonable to assume other living beings are also having some experience, right? I think beyond that, inanimate objects, right? I don't even think inanimate objects actually separately exist other than us labeling them as an object, right? So, like, would you say this to give you an example of this? Like, a mountain is built of a bunch of rocks, right? Is just the mountain conscious, or is the individual rock conscious,
All
right?
of it is
And then if the
conscious.
rock rolls off the mountain, does it become a separate experience in its own?
Yeah.
And now it's separate from the mountain?
Yeah, it does. It's separate from the
Okay.
mountain.
If you believe this, like, I can't help you. Like,
Why can't you
that's
help
fine.
me?
You can have this belief.
No. Why can't
It's just
I said it is the ability to interact with nature. So
I wouldn't deny that everything has the ability to interact with nature.
yes,
I
and
deny that
I
that
think
means
they
that
are
it's quote
aware
conscious.
enough. I think they're aware enough to be affected by weather, just like how
I
we
think
are
that they're
affected
affected by
weather.
weather. I think that they're affected by weather. I don't think there needs to be any awareness of that fact accompanying that at all.
I think if there isn't any awareness, then they wouldn't be able to process what that is.
Why? Like the chemical breakdown of a rock, let's say due to erosion, right, can happen without there being the rock being aware of it at all, right?
Say it again.
Like the water can erode a rock, right? That like is getting hit by the waves over and over again, right? Just fine without the rock needing to be aware of anything at all.
But again, it's like, is it giving feedback after the water hits it? After the water erodes it?
I mean, there's interaction between like particles, right? That we know from chemistry and physics and everything else.
Yeah.
No one's denying that, right? But there's no reason that needs to be accompanied by any kind of inner experience or some sort of awareness of something happening.
I don't think it's true. When we look, okay, so for example, when you cut a tree into, a tree, and you're able to see the rings, doesn't it tell scientists something that
Yeah, it does. It says like what the weather was and like how the tree grew,
like,
right?
so it's
like,
communicating. It's literally communicating. It's giving us feedback on an incident that happened prior to us even existing. Or
I mean, so is like I mean, it's giving what's happening is a conscious being is observing things and then inferring information from it, right?
Okay.
But the reason we get information is because of you being conscious, right? Like
Yes, and
that's what's having the experience.
Again, okay, listen, Matt, it doesn't have to be us. Like, if animals have consciousness too, doesn't the animal have to know that this plant is poisonous and this one isn't?
Yeah, I would grant that things that are alive, it's reasonable to assume they quote have consciousness or have a point of
as
view.
long as they
I
give
deny
us-
that
yeah.
something that's not alive though. The reason I think that is because those things are just like me and I know I have consciousness. So like I'm
what do
basing
you
that on that
describe as
data.
life? So then what do you describe as life?
There's a lot of things, but I think the key ones are probably has metabolism, can reproduce, grows, is not built like a machine, like is something that grows. There's a bunch of other like characteristics. As far as we know, carbon-based. What's that?
Does it die?
Yeah, it can die. It's alive, right? Like things that are alive can die, right? A rock can't die.
It can evaporate.
That's not dying. So that like it wasn't. We have markers of life that we measure, like metabolism, right? And then we have death. Like for you, I can tell like there's a very big difference between you alive right now and then you having a heart attack and 4 hours from now being dead. There's an actual measurable difference between those two states.
And
there's no such thing for a rock.
I think that holding a rock and then throwing it really far, hitting something really strong can evaporate it, which means that it is dead from its original form.
But that's not what we call life, right? Like,
That's
so
what I'm
just something taking a different form is not something that
Because
like.
I'm gonna
So
take a
now you're
different
saying
form when
anything
I'm
that can
dead.
take a different form is alive. So then you're just saying everything is alive. It's sort of like everything is conscious, everything is alive. You're just sort of making these claims without any justification other than I'm saying so.
I'm telling you that interact with nature. I'm telling you about a rock because even human beings do not go back to their original form. We don't go back to being a fetus or whatever it is, right? Like you go back to being bones and dirt or whatever it is. So you change even your form.
Yeah, when you die, you do.
Yeah,
You
that's
become
what
an
I'm saying.
inanimate
So-
matter, and then you change form, just like inanimate matter does, right?
I
So,
just
like-
feel like when I define what consciousness is, when I define what life is, because it doesn't fit into your mold, you're like, oh, you like, you know what I mean?
Well, you're just changing the definition of words to
No, I'm
whatever you
not.
want them to be.
I'm
Yeah.
describing things that is maybe you never considered or is just different from you. But it doesn't mean that I'm wrong because I am giving you what I would consider to be life and what I would consider to be death.
All
And then
right.
you're like, oh, I can't
Let me
see it
play
for
the
you.
same game. Let me
Hmm.
play the same game. I define physical as mental. So therefore, reality is mental. Do you accept?
Say it again. You believe that physical is
Yeah.
mental?
When you say physical, what I mean by that is mental states. So therefore, idealism is correct because even you agree that reality is physical, and to me,
I,
that means mental.
I think that you're just speaking because then it will only be about human beings and animals, and I think that we need to expand a lot more and include things that
Okay,
don't have a
but that's not the
brain.
conversation. I'm trying to have a more basic conversation with you. Like you are like to have that conversation, you are defining words differently than everybody uses them. So you're not even really speaking English once you do that. And then you're saying this is why my argument works. So that's what I was trying to give you an example of. Like, what if I just changed the definition of physical to
Hmm.
mean what I mean by mental? And then therefore my ontology is correct. Like this is not a good argument for me.
Okay.
This is a stupid argument. And so like I think that's what you're doing here. You're basically saying, well, what I mean by life and what mean by consciousness is completely different from everybody else. And that's why my argument now works. And to
Do
me,
you
it's just
agree that
trivial.
sometimes words, like as we are evolving, certain meanings get expanded?
Yeah, on a consensus basis, not like because you decided that.
That's fine, but if it begins here, it begins with you and I.
Languages evolve. Yeah, sure. Languages
Yeah,
evolve, right?
so again, it's not like I didn't like when you use the word stupid, right? Because it changes the tone of what you and I are doing here.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I don't mean to call you
yeah,
stupid.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying if I were to make this kind of argument, like I
Hmm.
don't think it's a coherent way to argue.
I
You know?
feel like I'm pretty much open to things because again, like language evolves. So if if that's not what the description is now, it doesn't mean that you and I cannot have that conversation and then see if we can expand that definition of what life is, what consciousness is. It's just like we're just like teasing our brains, really. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, but there's a sort of incredulity about going too far with that, like because what that opens up, if you go too far with that, it
mhm,
becomes anything that I want to say is just we have to consider it because like I decided that you got to be open to the meanings of words, and
mhm,
I don't think that's really a way to do this. Like if you want to say that life is just interaction between physical things, like you've
mhm.
got to convince science of that, not me. You know.
Okay.
Like, and so like I think that like you can say that, but like I won't accept your definition. Like I'll
Okay.
just say that definition is not what I mean by life.
Okay. Um, where is the consciousness located in the brain?
It's not. The brain is located in consciousness.
The brain is located. The the brain is located.
Yeah, see, there's an
Okay.
assumption built
So.
into your question. The
Mhm.
assumption is that there's such a thing as a brain, this physical thing, and consciousness must be located within it. But
I
that
think
already
that's what
assumes your
ChatGPT
conclusion.
said. I think
Yeah.
ChatGPT said consciousness arises from the complex interplay of billions of neurons in the brain.
That's a physicalist hypothesis. That's not like science or anything like that.
Okay.
Right, you know, there's no scientific theory of consciousness, right? Like this is not the case. Like that
Oh, so
statement, consciousness arises from neurons in the brain, neuronal firing in the brain, is a metaphysical statement. It's not like a scientific statement. Let me see too. If ChatGPT really says that, I'll be
no, hold on.
very surprised.
Or just put it in Google. It says consciousness arises from the complex interplay of billions of neurons in the brain. Though how this happens is one of science's biggest mysteries. It is not a product of a single brain area, but emerges from the coordinated activity of many regions, including the cerebral cortex and the thalamus. Key dimensions of consciousness, such as wakefulness, awareness, sensory organizations, are regulated by various brain networks.
Yeah, so here's what ChatGPT says. On the question, do we know consciousness arises from neuronal firing in the brain? Short answer, no. We do not know for certain that consciousness arises from neuronal firing in the brain, but we do know that neuronal activity is extremely tightly correlated with conscious experience, which I totally agree with.
So can we know where wakefulness, awareness, sensory, all these things, do we know where it is in the brain?
No, we don't, right? We like the question itself, like we don't even think like so All we know is that certain conscious experiences correlate with certain brain states. That's what we know.
How do you feel about when people are in a coma?
Like I think that that's a certain kind of experience, right? That like basically correlates with whatever like the brain state of that person looks like.
Don't doctors bring them back to life?
I mean, they come back like from a coma, right? Like you can get out of that brain state. Like, just how about when you go to sleep every night and you're in deep sleep, right? You're
Hmm.
essentially in the same state.
I mean, there are different types of sleep. There are ones where you're like oh they're in the edge and you sort of can control the end of your dreams. I don't know if you've had that.
Yeah, sure. Like lucid dreaming.
Oh, lucid dreams, yeah.
There's REM sleep. There's all kinds, but there's deep sleep where you're actually like nothing. You don't remember anything and nothing's going on. But you're certainly conscious because like if somebody were to clap their hands in your room, you'd wake up. So you're aware.
Um, what about people with like brain injury and brain issues and
Yeah, there's really interesting. Like there's something called acquired savant syndrome that's really interesting, where people get a brain injury and instead of the result being that they're impaired in some way, they like suddenly know a new language or suddenly can play the piano like in a concert level, like with no training.
you know I
So
never
like,
believed that.
yeah, you can look it up. It's called acquired savant syndrome.
That's wild.
It's well known.
Like they can speak
Yeah,
a whole new
and so
language.
yeah, totally. And so like but like that's neither here nor there. Like obviously, like most of the time, if you damage the brain, it changes your experience in a negative way or can kill you, can do all kinds of things, right? But like so nobody disagrees about this. Like these pieces of data, and let me give you why this is like not relevant to this discussion. So like if you had a world that's like full of radios, right? But critically like we don't know how radios work. We just like know that there's these radios everywhere. And if we measure the electrical signals inside the radio, we can see that it correlates like really well with the music that's coming out of the speakers, right? And if we take a screwdriver and we jam it inside the radio and we like mess up the electronics, then we either stop the music completely or change the music in some way, right? Damage it, right? And then from that data, we said, okay, I have all this data. So obviously, radios generate music. We would be wrong about that conclusion, right?
Yeah.
And it's because we mixed up correlation and causation. And so what we have, like ChatGPT said, is we have lots of data that shows brain states correlate with conscious experiences. And that's what we can say. And like the idealist agrees with that and the physicalist agrees with that. So it doesn't really settle anything about the question. The way to answer, the way to settle this is if the physicalist could explain how the neuron firing generates an experience, like say the taste of chocolate or the taste of strawberries, and why one neuronal firing has to be the taste of chocolate and the other one has to be the taste of strawberries. Like that's the task at hand. Like in the same way we can say, when we look at the engine in a car, we can explain why the pistons going up and down ultimately end up turning the wheels.
I spoke to you about my background being religious and then irreligious and stuff. And this
Yeah,
whole not
totally.
being able to track it is just like another word for like soul. It's a soul. And the
Look, I
soul is
hear,
outside
I
of
hear
the
this. Like,
body
let
and
me
it's like
soften a bit
so I
because we're
can't
like
like
arguing.
I'm still I
L-
don't
l-
want to be
I-
convinced because it just is I feel like I'm going back to
Yes,
you know
precisely. You feel like I'm trying to sell you some religion right now, right? And I get that. So I want to be very careful and I want to soften a bit here because like we can argue about these like philosophical points and the scientific data and stuff like that. But let's get down to what we're really talking about here because I think it's really important. I think what you're bringing up here is totally right. Like you had, I'm going to guess, you used these being religious, right? And sort of deconstructing from that, you feel like you escaped some kind of like dogma, some beliefs that you had that were like not helping you and like aren't true and were causing pain maybe or like causing harm in the world for other people that are using those beliefs to justify.
I had to believe that I was made up of body, soul, and spirit, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
the only one that I can vouch on is my physical, and then the last two, it's just a theory.
faith. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
it's
faith or
something
something that you have to have.
non-existent. It's something outside of
Right,
the body, something outside of the
right.
brain, and yet somehow I need to acquire it to impact my life. And then I'm
Right.
asking you what consciousness is, and you're telling me that it is something that is outside of my brain and something that I can. So it's like I don't know.
Yeah, so you see this parallel of like something feels here like I'm trying to slide you back into a religious frame or like
Absolutely.
a faith-based belief. So I want to be very clear. Like, one, I sympathize like a lot with because I think that when people have beliefs, right, about the world and they think they know things and then they say them as if they know them, even though they just really kind of believe them because somebody told them or they had some argument told to them or their dad told them or they grew up in a community that you have to be this way, like all those stupid reasons for believing something I think are stupid reasons. Like I am just as against religion as you are, like probably more than you are. Like, and so I am definitely not trying to make you believe something and like believe it on some sort of faith and like
So
not on reason.
am I missing out on something? Like
Yeah,
if
this
I
position is
yeah.
more skeptical than yours. So I actually take it one step further. Like, so I was an atheist, like I wasn't religious, like I said.
Hmm.
I was an atheist kind of my whole life. Although I was taken to church when I was like a little kid. And because my parents like thought that was just like the right thing to do or whatever in our like where we lived. And I even then I like kind of looked at all these people like saying all these things, and I like as a child I was like, why are these adults like making things up that they don't know? Because I know they don't know it for sure. They're just like wanting to feel good about it or something, you know. And I totally rejected it. But like but looking at it even then, I was like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, right? And so then for a long time, right, like I just kind of took my own beliefs about the world for granted as if I knew them. And what I'm telling you is that this position that there is matter out there outside of consciousness that we can that exists and that generates it is another belief system. It is just things that I don't know are true. And so what I'm trying to say is that the position I'm talking about is actually more skeptical than physicalism. It believes less than physicalism. Now, that said, it feels like I'm sort of sliding back into religion because I am basically arguing against physicalism, and there's a sort of safety in thinking, well, I know everything now. I know that the world is physical, and I can measure everything, and there's nothing more to this than that. And because I'm saying, well, we don't even know that, it sounds like, oh, well, then you're just opening the gates to any kind of belief that anybody
Yeah.
wants. And I'm definitely not doing that. Like, I am very much against like any Christian that wants to come and say there's a God out there and that like it tells you what to do and like any of that stuff.
I,
Like
uh-huh.
I
Sorry.
think beliefs like this are harmful. I think they so I don't think you should even believe me. I don't even want you to believe what I'm saying about
Yeah.
reality. Like I think that like all I want you to do is question the
Hmm.
beliefs that you already have
Which
and
is
say like, is
reality.
that true? Do I really know it?
Which is reality. Because
Which
I'm
is
very
physical reality.
because
Physical
I'm
reality.
very evidence based now, and so
Hmm.
you're handing me something without any like it's not
All right,
tangible.
here's
So I'm like I'm a
all right. So
physicalist. Yeah.
forget
So
consciousness. Forget consciousness. Let's forget about that then,
no.
and just say,
Answer
oh,
this. Answer this. Answer this.
mhm.
You know, I don't know what you know, right? But is it helping you in some way in life that I'm missing out on? Like me,
Yes,
if really.
oh, yes,
So
for
me
sure.
thinking that consciousness is in the brain and that life is includes non-living
Well,
things, you think that I'm missing out on something that you have.
okay, the second part about like whether or not like all inanimate things are conscious,
Yeah.
that's a
Okay.
different discussion.
Yeah.
Like
So
I don't
answer the
really care
first one.
about that
Yeah.
one, to be honest. Like
Hmm.
that, the only reason that one annoys me a little bit is because lots of people think AI is conscious right now, and they
Mm.
care more about their AI friend than they care about, let's say, the fact that we're like throwing baby chickens into meat grinders alive if they're the
Oh my
wrong
goodness.
sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
like I don't that's my objection to when people say, 'cause, like, and look, like I don't know, I'm sure you're not really doing this, you're just trying to like make sense of the world, but like some people are like literally like married to their AI chatbot and like they get personally offended if you say like Chat GPT maybe isn't conscious, you know, and like but it really affects people. Like I think that people get there's like psychosis and stuff. But anyway, let's forget that. So I don't care about that part of it, right? But like the first part about like about what is the nature of reality, right? This does matter because it matters for what you think the nature of yourself is and what's going on here in the world and like what other people are and how we should treat other people and why that makes sense. So all of those questions that people try to answer through religion are better answered by looking at reality clearly and then saying, oh, this is why. and it's not based on belief. It's just based on getting rid of beliefs. So, you know, because like if you think that all you are, right, is the physical stuff that makes up your body, right? That's what defines you. Then obviously, like you are this separate thing that's sort of in conflict with the rest of the world, that's like worried about dying all the time and like needs to survive and like is, you know, that's what you are, right? Your consciousness is gone as soon as you're dead. And that's it. That's the world, right? And I think that actually causes a lot of trouble in the world when people think this way because it makes them very materialistic. It makes them very, very like scared for themselves, you know, and just anxious, you know.
Okay, so one of the fundamental questions is, where do we come from? Where are we here? And then where do we go when we die?
All right, so let me like tell you what an idealist would say about this, like somebody who, like me, who doesn't think the world is necessarily physical, right? So, like basically, what, you know, just to define this clearly, like in this model, basically, there's one mind. There's actually only one mind. It just seems to be that we're all separate in this way, but we are really separate in the sense that how do I put this like in a simple way? Like, you know, when you go to, like I brought that example up before, when you go to sleep and have a dream, you become the dream character and you forget all the other parts of your mind, unless you're having a lucid dream, but like a normal dream, right? You totally don't remember that you're Ajo on TikTok, like, and you're, you know, you have this other life. Like you're like having this experience, and as far as you know, that's who you are, right? Like, so that's real. Like that experience is real to that character, right? And it feels just as real as this life feels, right? And so I'm not denying that, right? Like that. But if this reality were like that there's one mind and we've dissociated, we've sort of had this mental process where we've forgotten that we're one mind and we now think we're separate, then this is how the world would appear, right? And so like what life is basically that kind of mental process happening in that mind, a dissociative mental process, like something where we've forgotten that we're one mind. And then death is just the end of dissociation. It's the end of that. So the person, yeah, I'm gone. Like Stash doesn't exist after I'm dead, right? But the thing is, that's not what I really am, in the same way that like when I'm asleep and I'm in a dream character, I'm not actually that character. I was never that character.
That. So how do you know when you've arrived there? How do you know if the dream that you're having is where you need to be?
Well, I mean, I think the better thing would just be to notice that like you don't have a reason to think that it's not dreamlike in this way. Like to think that you're actually this physical stuff is all there is. Like you don't need to believe in that because like there's not actually evidence for that.
I can't even control that.
Well, I mean, you can't. You can look at it clearly and you can say like, how do I know that physical stuff exists outside of consciousness? Do I actually know that? And the answer to that question is no, we don't. We are proposing it. A physicalist will say it does, but it's just a belief. Like somebody else might say, well, there's this God out there, and the God created all this stuff. And they're actually the same as two beliefs.
Do you think this is practical?
It's very practical. like for instance, when you're in a dream, right, and you don't know who you are, right, and you're like asleep, and let's say it's a nightmare, right? How much more practical is that nightmare when you do know, when it's a lucid dream and you wake up within the dream and go, oh, this is just a dream? How much more like rational can you be about the situation in front of you?
When it's a lucid dream, I tend to narrate the story.
Yeah, you can control the story basically, right?
Yeah.
Right, and so you feel like you're not just like, this isn't just happening to you. Like you're in control of it to some extent. So it's very liberating in the same way of like, if let's say that, to use another analogy, like let's say that you're playing a VR game and it's like Call of Duty and everyone's trying to kill you and stuff, right? And you think that that's really happening to you, right? There's a big difference between that happening or that you like know that you're sitting on the couch and you can pull off the VR headset and know that you're not actually the character, right? So it's very practical to
Isn't
to
there?
not be confused about this.
I heard that sometimes the brain cannot even differentiate between when it's a dream and what it's not. Like when something is reality and when
Yeah.
it's not.
We're very good at like, so it's very easy to decide. Like, so there's people that have multiple personality disorder, right? Where they
Mm-hmm.
like think that they're different people all the time, and they literally don't know each other, right? And they actually studied those people's dreams, and it turns out that those people, each character that they have, that seems to be like a separate person within them, experience the dream, the same dream from their own points of view. They saw each other in the dream as other characters in the dream, right? And so, yeah, no, it's very like convincing. Dissociation's like very, very convincing, you know? Um, even like one of the alters that somebody had, like as a multiple personality person, was supposedly blind. Of course, the person wasn't blind; like they could see in all the other sort of characters that shifted like their identity, right? But they scanned the person's brain, and when the person was reporting they were in this alter that was blind, the visual cortex was actually shut down on the brain scan, which is totally impossible to fake, right? So dissociation can be very powerful
Yeah.
in terms of deluding you as to what's going on.
Yeah,
So
and
anyway, like
it's still not solving the problem. Like it's sort of like a temporary fix. It's like you're trying to calm your brain down, but telling your brain that this is just temporary, this is just a dream, this is like you're just trying to calm your brain down, but it still has like
mhm.
lasting effects on you, like your nervous system and like being
Yeah, you're
traumatized
still
from
a
an
human
incident.
being.
Yeah,
Yeah, you still experience, but you experience from a little bit better position than like this is actually
right.
happening to me right
Yeah,
now.
instead of
So
like
it's
you're
not
like being
it
a
doesn't solve
victim.
the whole problem
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
sure. Like you have to live your life, and like
Mm-hmm.
you're still a human, and like you're gonna die, and all of that is true, you know. And so like but I would say it's practical in the sense that like, look, I just think it's not practical to believe in things that I
Mm-hmm.
don't know to be true. And like I said, this is actually a more skeptical position. It's like less believey. I'm not just taking anything on faith. And look, I don't want to. I also want you to like. I think that for someone that's in your position, like it's the right thing to deconstruct from the religion. And maybe it's even the right thing to just go, you know what, physicalism makes me feel secure. Um, and it's like needed, like in order to like, because of all of the past bullshit that you got subjected to, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
even trying to convince you to switch out of that. Like I just like would say, if you're curious about it, like really look into the difference between what science says
Mm-hmm.
and what physicalist ontology means and how they came about. I mean, the reason physicalism really, 400 years ago, there was no such thing. 500 years ago, everyone was religious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no such idea that like this is just a physical world, you know?
Yeah.
And physicalism was sort of started because it was a way to get separation from the church, who was going to kill you and burn you at the stake if you like did science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of like invented this as a way to be like, no, we're only going to like study the things that like we're studying God's design. We're
Mm-hmm.
studying the physical world, and it shouldn't threaten you, Catholic Church or whatever it was. It should be fine. We should be allowed to do this. And it was kind of known at that time that they were like, well, we're going to like kind of cut any kind of mental stuff out of our picture, but
Mm-hmm.
like we're doing that on purpose to not get killed. And so like it makes sense like to come from like religious belief and all the craziness and stupidness that has, to like end up in a physicalist position, at least for a while. But I would just say that like ultimately
Mm-hmm.
I care about what's actually true,
Yeah.
and like even more than it makes me feel comfortable or whatever. But like I would say this, I would say like there is it's not, the physicalist view ultimately is a nihilistic one. Like
Yeah.
if you really accept it at the end of the day, there's no real reason for anything to be happening. There's a sense that you're separate from everybody else,
And then like nothing
and
matters.
this
Like all
does
these
lead to problems, you
all
know?
these suffering and all these worries and all these happiness, like it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
like you can also sort of
Right.
think that it doesn't exist. You just sort of
But if
feeling
it's
these
true, it's
feelings.
true. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that's a reason to not believe in it. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just like, well, even if it's just like that's the case, then but like what I would say, at least from my point of view, is that there's actually no reason to think that it's true. And so therefore that is the kind of thing that makes it practical to like not believe in it. Because just like religion, like when you believe in religion, yeah, there's like some kind of like some people get some sort of comfort from it, but there's a huge price to pay.
Yeah.
And all of this righteousness and telling everybody else what to do and like killing in the name of it and having the best idea and everyone else is wrong and all that stuff, right? Like, and so anytime you have a belief that isn't justified, there's like a downside to that. And I think it holds even for physicalism, but it's a step we also have to go through. I think it's the right step to go from a religious, like, dualistic kind of view to physicalism. But I think that physicalism will ultimately sort of implode on itself because people will get super materialistic, and that will bring suffering and
Really?
conflict.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll definitely dive into that part later on. Can you answer some questions in the comment section? One person is
Yeah, sure.
asking, would a person who's never tasted strawberry know what strawberry tastes like? This is from J2.0.
I mean, no, yeah, there's nothing you could tell them, right? Like I could describe to you the taste of strawberries all I want. I could write every possible description and you would definitely learn something new the second you bit into a strawberry comparatively to me describing it, right?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
they
So
each communicate something different. It's a feeling. Maybe
one's
like
a
the next time you
description.
taste strawberry, you remember not necessarily the taste, but how it made you feel, or like where you were, and maybe that.
Well, it's an experience. It's
Yeah,
an
yeah,
actual experience. Whereas like what I'm telling you about it is just a description of an experience.
Got it.
And so this is precisely actually the point about physicalism that makes it wrong is what physicalism says is actually, no, you don't learn anything new by the experience. Just the description is enough. And that's because what physical stuff is a description of an experience. And what physicalism tries to say is that, oh, it's just the description I need, and I can, from the description, generate the experience. And that's backwards. So like it's like saying you could go to a restaurant and if I write the menu in a detailed enough way, you can eat the menu. This isn't true.
No, it's not true. Yeah. Okay. Next time, we're definitely going to talk about certain experiences that we go through and whether it's worth it. But next question: what is the difference?
Oh, hey, Alex is in the comments.
Oh,
Alex,
he
if
is.
you want him to come up.
I reach out to him in the DM. He ignores me all the time, so I'll let him stay.
Oh, hey, Alex, come up, man. Come up, buddy.
What is the difference between awareness and consciousness? Next question.
Yeah, I don't think that there is. Like, I mean, it depends on what people want to, like, when I say consciousness, what I mean is that in which all things appear. In other words, like the field of subjectivity in which everything appears. And I think when people say awareness, they mean the same thing, but it depends. Sometimes people think that consciousness means self-awareness, like being aware of yourself. And I think that's what I would call meta-consciousness or some higher level mental function. Like, I think I'm aware of myself, but I don't think a tree is aware of itself in the same way. I think it's just aware.
Yeah.
I think it's aware. I don't think a tree is. I think a tree is conscious. So we'll agree about that. Okay. What we won't agree about is the rock. Okay. But we'll agree. I will go all the way down to a single-celled organism, as long as it's an organism, like it's a self-contained, living thing. I think that it has a point of view.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it extends past that to like inanimate objects.
We'll see.
That's all.
Next question is from Street Monk. It says, you can be aware of your consciousness, but never conscious of being aware.
You can be aware of your consciousness, but never conscious
of being aware.
I mean, I don't know. Like, it depends how you're using those words. Like,
I think you just put words together.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're the same thing. So, I mean, I don't think there's a your consciousness. I think there's just consciousness, and consciousness is aware of everything. So, I guess I'd answer it that way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I feel like all of this is rooted in ableism. Are you familiar with what ableism is?
No. What's that?
It's like we get to sit up here and, because we are fully conscious and we're thinking that there's nothing wrong with our brain, right? Like we don't have any brain injuries and stuff, so we can think all these thoughts. But unfortunately, someone with a head injury cannot process this type of information. And then remember I asked you whether I'm lacking or whether like my life experience is being affected by the fact that I think that physicalism is all that matters, right? And then you're saying that I am it's not on certain things. But you can convince me to live in not live in that mindset, right? But like someone who has issues with their brain, like maybe someone with autism or something, like something is happening with them, they cannot fully experience what you and I,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
definitely different like mental
So that's
abilities.
like
Like I
unfortunate
just said, a
that,
tree can't experience anything like I can experience,
yeah,
right? Like,
but
but I still think both of us are conscious. Like the tree and myself has some point of view. So again, when I say consciousness, all I mean is something it's like to be, not that like what it's like to be that thing. Like it could be it's very different to be a worm or to be me, in everything that we perceive about the world.
how
But I
can
just think what's the same is we're both aware of something.
can you describe to me, like, if you were in charge of like a civilization and you were to uh, how do you transfer that information to people, and how would you govern like your own
Oh
system? How does
gosh,
that
no.
look
I
like?
like. I think I would say this. Like, can't. You can't really. Like, the best thing you can do is like work on yourself and like be who like live according to your understanding and like talk to people who are interested about it. Like, you certainly can't force anybody to do anything. Like, I think that's like a root of the ego kind of going, I've got the right answer. And like, this is what religion tries to do, right? Like,
I
I've
think it's
got the right
fine.
answer.
I
And
think
now
it's fine. I
you
think
all
if
have to live by my
no, no,
rules.
no, Stash. You said that materialism is going to explode on itself. So that's what sort of made me ask you what your version of it will look like.
I see. I
Like,
see.
yeah,
Well,
like
I
you
mean,
have to
I
create
think,
something if this one is
I
going to
mean, I think
implode on
it would,
itself.
if people not only like sort of like, let's say that more people thought of the world the way that I do, and not only that, really like internalized it and like lived that philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would be far less materialistic, way more empathetic, way more willing to help other people. All of these things, and this would naturally be very good
That would be
for
such a
society.
terrible thing, because we would not have any type of inspiration to create and model things and experiment on things, because
Sure we would. Sure we would. Like we would just do it in a frame that makes like sense instead of like blindly just going after, let's say, maximum wealth, right? We
mm-hmm,
would understand that like that's not important actually. Like there are more important things than that. Right? Like look at someone like Elon Musk, right?
mm-hmm,
Like Elon Musk is it's fine. I'm not going to shit on Elon Musk. I'm just going to say that what motivates him, right,
mm-hmm.
is like this belief that like, well, we really need to like get off the planet, or we
Yeah.
really need to these kind of things, right? And like these beliefs make sense if you think like the physical world is all there is, and like and like happiness is found through material gain and that kind of thing. They just don't make sense like in a different
So you
ontology,
don't
and
have
that's
anything
fine.
positive to say about materialism and people who live in this way.
No, I do. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think like a certain amount, like I mentioned, science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like gets us technology and physical comfort. I think
Yeah.
that this is all good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we shouldn't take it to its limit, right? Like we should just like be like, oh, okay, well, that's like physical comfort is important and to a point, but not the only thing that's important, right? Like mental well-being is also important.
Yeah.
And we should like not neglect one for the other, right? So it's very balanced. Like we should of course do science, and we should like do things that will help to reduce suffering, right? But we should also recognize that there's like a point where we're not helping reducing suffering, we're like increasing suffering.
Would there be a buy and sell system?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I like, to me, capitalism, like I think like from a political point of view, like one thing you learn in this intelligence is to kind of understand that you don't know what's best for everybody. So it's like best to do the least harm kind of. And so I think like a sane view is like balanced somewhere in the middle. Like I think both sides of the political side are very religious in the sense that they're like, I've got the one right answer that's best for everybody, and I should be able to enforce it upon the world. And if I can do that, everyone will be happy and we'll have the utopia. And I think that that's like just ego and like misguided. I think so. I tend to just be like, well, I don't really know the answer. So like, let's not like do anything extreme. And of course, I think like the best system we have in terms of like generating this physical comfort that is necessary, like obviously, and then we're not that, it'd be great if we can make it so like everyone is like physically secure, right? And like doesn't have to worry about feeding themselves.
I feel like you're shying away from like making it into a religious thing, because is the one
Because
known thing
it's
that's
not a
proven.
religious thing. That's why.
No, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
you could take some notes from that type of system because it is proven to work. When you mention
Yeah.
Elon Musk, I think it's fascinating. Like when human beings are able to push themselves and create things, I think it's fascinating, and I think we need to continue to push that. If one day
Yep.
you and I are no longer here and people can live on Mars, I think that is incredible, right? Like
Yeah, but
because
I
when
think one of the things, sure, and I'm not, that's what I'm saying. I'm not shitting on it really.
hmm
But I am saying that like it's good to do that in context. Like it's good to do that with balance. It's not good if that's all that drives us, right?
but
Is
it's
like
not
material gain.
no, that's not. I mean, no. I think I sometimes like in the beginning of things, when things are being created, it's sort of exclusive in the beginning, and then as time goes on, everybody can do
Yeah.
it. Like now, everybody has a chance to fly a plane, but I'm sure like back in the days, it was probably like a
Yeah.
luxury to fly a plane. And I think right now,
Yep.
the most luxurious thing is a private jet. I think a time will come where everybody can afford a private jet, and then
Yep.
the most exclusive thing is being able to go to Mars. And I love that for humanity. So
Yeah, look,
what's the
I'm an
other side?
engineer. I design microchips that are the cameras in your cell phones and in cars
Oh,
and in everything
cool.
else, like the camera chips, right? That's what I do for my work, and I'm paid real well to do it. And so, like, I'm not against capitalism. Like, I just
Uh-huh.
think that I just think that that there's a balance to be had for sure. Is my
Mhm.
whole life about that? No, it's not. There's a lot more important things, but it's definitely. I agree with you that that I think it's a disaster. Like certainly we've seen in history, right? Like if we go to top-down communism, where it's like enforced by the government that everyone can't have these kind of like lofty goals and going after wealth or anything because everyone has to be equal. We see like starvation and death, right? So I obviously like there's degrees here, and that's why I say like the answer is pretty much in the middle somewhere, between like hyper, oligarchy and capitalism and
Mhm.
communism. Like it's somewhere
Yeah.
in between those two. And yeah, I think that's a balanced approach to things.
Fun. One of my guys has finally here. Let's see. Captain, can you grab the mic again? Sorry, Captain, can you grab the mic again? I think Alex accepted
But I
him.
think these are the questions too. Like, yeah, I
hmm
don't know if Alex is still in here, if you
Yeah,
want
I
to bring
just
him up or not,
accepted
but
him. Captain,
okay.
grab the mic again, please.
I think that you're asking like the questions here about like, okay, well, if I had a different worldview, like what would that mean for the world
Yeah,
if
yeah.
like we all weren't physicalists? I think this is exactly the right kind of questions. Like and also like what we've seen the downsides of like when religion runs the government, right? We can see that
Mm-hmm.
like all over the world, especially like look in the Muslim world, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
like the government and the religion are the same thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's terrible. And so like, I think that
I don't think you should shy away from it. I was actually talking to Captain last week, and he sounds like he also has a vision for what, like if he had the opportunity to like create a civilization, like he has an idea, but he's like shy of saying that it is an ideology. And I feel like Stash, you also need to like be bold enough to say like we need to move from like physicalism to consciousness, and then like make it a religion and let people join. Like people want to leave these
Look,
traditional
I
ones
talk
and
about this. I
Mhm.
talk about this in public. I talk about it with Alex 3 times a week, and we have a podcast.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I do things like that, but like, I'm not. I definitely think it's a problem if I were to say you got to believe what I believe. Like, I really just
No,
want people to figure it out for themselves.
it's the again. And you and I are gonna have this conversation again because you need to convince me that my physicalism is going to come to an end, and then I'm missing out on something. Like I really want to explore what I'm missing out on because I'm a very
I want to
curious
point
person.
you to like it's better than coming from me. Just to write this name down real quick, or
Uh
write
huh.
2 things down.
I'm
Write
gonna
down
put it.
Bernardo Kastrup.
Hold on 1 second. Bernardo. Last name again?
Kastrup, Kastrup,
KASPR.
UP.
Bernardo.
And then, like you write this down, analytic idealism course. And like if you search that on YouTube, you'll see like a 7-part video series because it'll be way better than me sort of just like one by one answering your questions.
I know,
And
right?
like all this will give you is like an overview of like what the problems with physicalism are and what idealism is as an alternative. And then at least you'll be like fully informed about what's being said.
Yes.
And then we can talk more about it like from
Yay.
that lens. Yeah.
Captain, hi, Captain. Hi.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, pardon my lateness. Hi,
It's all
Stash.
right. It's
Hi,
all right.
Hey,
Alex.
what's up, Captain?
Captain,
Good,
why don't
good.
you describe your ideology or like where you are presently? I did tell Stash that we are coming from a religious background. But besides that, like where you are like mentally in terms of how you operate and how you view the world, like what would you describe that as? Hi, Tara.
Hi, Tara. Too. Is this related to consciousness or just
Yes,
generally?
I want him to understand like who, like what you describe yourself as, and then maybe he could have like a background of like how to maybe view you or gauge you or see where you're coming from. I feel like that would be the best way to start.
Okay. Yeah, I would say maybe it's related to consciousness. I'm a complete materialist. I'm also non-religious, so I don't subscribe to any major religion.
What was that
Um,
first part? You said you're a stump.
just there. As it pertains to consciousness as well, I think it's something in in the human brain when it comes to the human consciousness. At least that's a critical point of location. It's I think it's somehow this system, but the critical point of location is the human brain, and I believe it could be isolated eventually, and we would see where people will isolate a human consciousness and be able to transfer it uh from the human body to some other system where it could be stored and interacted with. Um, so um, and this position is kind of guided from uh empirically because we see that human beings like we have a lot of tools right now that has a way to analyze the brain and see how it influences human activity. And we also look at unfortunate incidents where people do have some kind of injury to the brain, and we see the way that it influences the sense of judgment and other things concerning consciousness. Uh, so we have a basis to kind of conclude that consciousness is largely located in the brain. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, that's really my position generally. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. That's a very standard materialist, physicalist position, right? And all I would say is that you pointed at the end there to that the reason that you're a materialist or a physicalist is because you think the empirical evidence from neuroscience basically is, I don't know if you want to say pointing towards or if you think it proves that physicalism is true. I'm not sure. But like, regardless, what I would say about that is just that evidence that you're pointing at doesn't actually even point like any more to physicalism than it does like several other kinds of ontologies that it would also be the case in. And so I don't think it's a good reason to be a materialist. But like I get your point of view.
So yeah, so that's not my reason for materialism. That's the reason why I'm convinced that consciousness is stored in the brain. The main reason for materialism is I don't think that we could find an inflection point vis-a-vis like if we say that there's something physical and there's something that's non-physical, what would be what what would be the things or the properties of that entity that will make it qualified to be non-material?
Well, see, I would say it's the opposite though. Like, so what I would say is that like we don't have anything physical, like not as defined by materialism. Like that's just sort of like an idea that like can't actually be proven, because like what physicalism is saying is that there's a stuff called matter that exists outside of consciousness, right? And the outside of consciousness part is the part where like I think it's just sort of a belief. So like we'd have to prove that that's a thing. I think like the burden here is on the physicalist.
Yeah, I made a video yesterday talking about nobody knows what a rock is, and I meant it, right? So a rock dissolves into atoms. Atoms dissolve into subatomic particles. Subatomic particles dissolve into quantum fields. Quantum fields are an abstract mathematical concept. They're just operators in Hilbert space. It's like it's not somewhere you can like point to, right? And so I think with the quantum revolution over the last 100 years, how should I say this? Like this idea of like things at the base level of reality is just not. It's not what we're finding. It's much more abstract than people used to think. So I think I would agree with Stash in that the concept of a physical world is, I think, outdated at best. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that for now.
So when you say abstract, does it occupy any space? Because when you say you can't point to, for a thing to be a thing, it needs to have a point of reference. So are you saying it's possible for something to exist without a point of reference in space?
Yeah, so quantum fields are regarded as spatially unbound. So they're just existing everywhere.
So everywhere is a point of reference, right? So everywhere you're saying it is either uniformly or not uniformly distributed in space. That is like a location, because when you say everywhere, you've given it a location.
Mhm.
So it's for a thing to exist, right? You need to say this is it, meaning it has to have a description, also has a location. And the problem with everywhere is you're now saying that we could find it. So
Well, you actually can't. You can't find the field. What you can find is a particle, which is an excitation in the field. So, like, what I mean by that is there's no way to measure the field itself. You can only measure its excitations, which are the particles. So the field itself is like not something that we can even empirically access. It's literally just an idea. It's a concept. I think most physicists would probably agree with me on that. Maybe not, but like the particles are what we measure. But quantum field theory says that those particles are just excitations in the fields. We can't detect the fields. They're just mathematical.
So you would say that's a limit to our visibility and what we can detect, and not a matter of fact of whether it's a thing that exists in space, because it could be way beyond our frequency of detection.
I think all of science, right, is perception, and is therefore limited to that domain, to that which we can observe, right? So the method itself is limited in itself by its method of evidence acquisition.
That I totally agree. But I'm looking at this logically. So being that there's a whole world of things that we can detect, for us to say that a thing is
hold on. No, let me just land that one more thing on that. Okay. So then to claim, like, because physicalism makes an entirely different claim. Like if you said you just agree with what I just said, then you'd be saying essentially what I think, which is that science basically shows us what our sense perception perceives, not what reality is at all. Like it's just what we view reality through our sense perception and how it behaves, right? So do you think that or not? Because like physicalism saying, no, that there is a measurement. Like measurement isn't necessary. It already exists. That's what physicalism says.
Right. I see science as a methodology of arriving at truth, which is not making a statement. And that's why the inferences we get from the scientific method changes over time as reality changes and upgrades.
Yeah, right? So it's I say it this way, that science basically predicts the behavior of nature as it appears on the screen of perception. That's what science does. And it basically predicts its behavior. It doesn't tell you what it is at all. It's not even trying to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a method.
Okay.
And so we are the ones who come up with the conclusions and the inferences using, based on the method, and
Right.
that's why the conclusions and inferences we arrive at change over time. Because if you look back in history, based on our observations, it was a general consensus that atoms were the quantum of matter, right? And right now it's quarks, because this is how far that we can detect, right? But is there really a limit to how far that goes? If we say there's a limit, we're saying we have reached the limit of
The method that we're
uh,
using.
exactly,
Mhm.
and,
Well,
and
so
we're saying there's a limit to which we can zoom. There's a
Right,
limit to which we
right.
can zoom in. Yeah,
So this is science, and this is fine, and we all agree with that. But I think like what's being said, if you're a materialist, is, but I'm going a step further. I'm going to say that the stuff that we call physical, whatever that is, that's all there is, and that's what reality is, and everything can be derived from it. And so now this is like this didn't derive from the science that you're just stating.
yeah. There's a simple thing here, right, that I think we're kind of passing over, is that there's two ways to look at it. Either I have some kind of direct window into reality through my sense perceptions, or I don't, right? If I don't, that means I don't observe reality as it is in itself. I only ever observe it as it presents to my method of questioning: eyes, ears, math, whatever my method of questioning is. And so that's where this notion, this definition of physicality comes from. It comes from empirical observations. But if you're not accessing reality directly through empirical observations, if that's fundamentally off limits to you, then the notion of physicality is moot, right? Was
yeah.
that like too complicated, or did?
All right, I get it. I mean, all of existence has to be interpreted through a lens of some form of observation. Otherwise, like no statements could be made. The reason why we have any forms of beliefs or any positions in anything is because this is the only option we have in terms of interfacing reality, where we have to
Right.
experience it and then make whatever conclusions we're making from it.
Yeah.
The point. So the other point of physicality is I don't believe that nothing exists, right? And so if we say that wherever we are right now, that we consider physical, that we get to an extent where it's bounded by nothing on both ends, both from extrapolating and interpolating, in the sense that if we start zooming out, if we get to a point that we say there's a limit and then it's nothing, then what we're saying is that we'll have a whole lot of something that is embedded in nothing, which creates a more logical problem, because the fact that you have a point of reference to something which is outside of everything that exists, you've already have a point of reference to something which is outside of everything that exists. You've already made it something. Be floating in nothing.
That's not what's being said here. So
Yeah.
So it is no thing, but it's no thing, right? It just means non-physical. Now we're not saying that is somehow separate from reality. It just is reality. There's only one reality. And this isn't a religious thing. So it sounds like you might be hinting at some kind of God figure or some kind of supernatural being. That's not what this is about at all, like in any way. It's more we're talking about this experience that me and you are having right now. It's not something that's out there. It's not something that's outside of this or in some far off supernatural land. We're talking about the underlying essence of our current experience. So just to clarify that, but yeah, to me, nothing just means no thing. It just means non-physical, and I feel science supports the notion of no thing, but maybe everybody doesn't agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely disagree with it, because I've heard scientists say this when they talk about some things, quantum physics, and they say certain things pop out from nothing, and quickly go back to nothing. I just feel like it's a framing based on the limit of our perception. And why do we call it nothing? Because we can't detect it yet. Um, if we can detect something about it, like you're saying, the particles are kind of like point to the existence of a field, even though we can't necessarily identify, or isolate a field in space time, um, which makes it abstract. Uh, but the fact that we can isolate it doesn't really mean is in some other form of existence. I don't know how to explain this, because if we say it's not supernatural, and like where is this other thing? Because even without us pointing to the main thing, we can point to the metadata as it coming from our minds. So things that are abstract exist as thoughts in the human mind. And I don't think that thoughts are abstract per se, in terms of, they just exist in some other form of reality and somehow just exist in our mind. I think the actual things that are deposited somewhere in the brain, it could be super microscopic, but they exist and have forms, and they can move, right? Um, so it's still that inflection point. Where do we use the limit of our detection to determine that a thing is physical or not? What makes a thing non-physical?
Yeah. So I think that the foundational question here is, does reality exist in the way that I perceive it? Or is reality existing in some other way? Right? Because the way I perceive reality existing is physical. That's what all our empirical observations give us. Now, I think for me, it would be absurd as an evolved ape to think that reality is permanently stamped in the shape of my sensory perceptions. I feel like reality is whatever reality is. It's kind of like my senses put that infinity of what reality is into a little box. And that box happens to look like particles. But I don't see any reason to take the idea seriously that's what reality actually is. And there's good scientific mathematical arguments for why to support me on that. I think it's like Dr. Donald we can go into all that, but I don't want to like dump it all on you right now.
Okay, so to act simply, you're saying it's possible that we could be so limited in the sense that there's a possibility that something could exist without a location.
Not something. So something would mean to me physical. And obviously a physical thing cannot exist without a location, because that would be nonsensical. I think nothing exists. No thing exists. I think there is how should I say this? It's hard for even me to talk about it because it does start to sound paradoxical, but it's not. I would say that the only existence is non-physical. Physicality is only an appearance. It's how the non-physical existence appears to us with our sense perceptions.
um, wow. I'm thinking of a way to kind of really break this down. Um, or to break down what you're saying, what the inferences are. Uh, because, like you mentioned, it appears to be paradoxical. When we say nothing, it's like saying, "Oh, nothing."
Well, it's
No,
only paradoxical
it
based
doesn't
on
mean it exists.
most people's understanding of what they think nothing means. So colloquially, we use nothing to signify like literally nothing, like non-existence. And that's just not how I'm using it here. I'm just using like the way I use nothing is just to mean non-physical. I don't think there's anything illogical or paradoxical inherently about the concept of non-physical existence. And It's only if you think it just means you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. It sounds the same because okay, how would you describe something that does not exist?
You wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not saying that. That's the point. I'm trying to draw a distinction. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that existence is non-physical. So existence exists, but it's non-physical. It doesn't have intrinsic physical properties.
Existence exists, but doesn't have physical
Yeah,
properties.
look,
Can
the
you give us
opposite
an
position from
example?
physicalism is just idealism, which is that reality is mental, not physical. So it's very similar to physicalism in the sense that there's one substance and that substance makes up all of reality, right? But it just reverses the order. Whereas the physicalist says it's matter that's foundational, and matter basically gives rise to mind that's like sort of an epiphenomenon. This goes the other way and just says that mind is foundational and matter is the epiphenomenon.
Okay, so that's even clearer because now you're giving me the alternative. You're saying either thing is physical or is mental, and you're convinced that what is mental is not physical.
I'm not saying either or like that. It's not like a dichotomy necessarily, but like,
Okay.
I mean, in this discussion, it is like as far as we're just talking about between physicalism and idealism, right? I mean, there's obviously dualism and other things, but like, I'd say that yeah, like what we're saying is that it makes more sense. Just because when you put matter before mind, you get incoherent things like the hard problem of consciousness and things like that. I mean, not only that, but like what materialism basically says is that you can go to the restaurant and if somebody writes a detailed enough menu, you can eat the menu. And that's just incoherent.
Yeah, but so are you making the are you taking a position that what is mental is not physical?
I'm just taking a position that I'm skeptical. Like, I think we know consciousness exists, right? We don't know matter exists independent of consciousness. So I'm going to just take the skeptical position and stick with less beliefs about the world.
I see it. I see what you're saying.
It's just like saying, like, I like the farthest skeptical position is solipsism, where you can say, like, only my mind exists and everything only exists in my individual mind. We're not saying that. Like, I think it's reasonable to assume you're conscious and Alex is conscious, and like, there's all of existence does not exist in my mind, right? That's technically the only thing I can know is that I'm conscious. Like, I can't know you're conscious, but I think it's reasonable to make the inference that there are other mental states outside of my own. And because I know mental states to exist, I don't think it's reasonable to say only my mind is the thing that exists. But I think that then when you go further and say, now there's this other stuff called matter that exists outside of mind, like not within mind. Like we all agree, all of science works, all of that is within mind, as we describe matter as a description of the experiences we have, right? But only as a description. I'm not saying what I say is sort of not a skeptical position is that there's this stuff out there that exists outside of our experience. And then furthermore, that stuff that exists that we can't ever measure, can't ever find because doing so would only happen within experience is the thing that generates the experience in the first place. Like, so I think this has things backwards.
Yeah. I think I get the position. I still think the position is based on somehow drawing a slight dichotomy, even though I do understand that you're not necessarily calling it dichotomy. You're just saying you're skeptical. But
It is a dichotomy in a sense.
Yeah.
Like if I just assume your position, then I go, okay, what are the problems that come up? And we know that there's this problem of explaining mind, explaining consciousness in that model. And then when we look at why does that problem come up, you go, well, it's because we're making an assumption. We assume that there's this physical stuff that then through some sort of complex interaction generates mind, but this is not something we know for sure. It's just something that we're assuming. And then when you realize how insoluble that problem is, it just goes, oh, we must have made a false assumption.
Yeah. Because I guess for an infinite cosmos, right? We can't there cannot be an empirical proof for it. So it's still similar in the sense that we can't really, because if you start searching for boundaries that do not exist, like that search will be endless, right? You're gonna keep going on and not find any boundary, and you can only prove the negative vis-a-vis. You would only find a boundary and say, okay, we've reached a boundary, but that creates a new question of what exists beyond the boundary, and why that has a point of reference. So it's why the physicality in terms of we find an empirical proof to say there's a boundary to physicality where beyond that is nothing. It's how you possibly could never do that empirically.
I think the boundary of physicality is our human minds, though, aka physicality is only an appearance. It's just how it's literally just our idea of reality. Reality is doing whatever it's doing, no matter who's looking. But the way reality appears depends on who it's appearing to. When it appears to me or you or anyone equipped with similar sense perceptions, it looks physical. Now, again, it's doing its thing no matter who's looking, but the way it appears depends on who it's appearing to. So I think the boundary of physicality is not out there somewhere. It's right there with you. And so the non-physical is it just is. It's here. It's there. It just appears physical. It's all around you. Like it's just this reality. It's the same reality.
So it's okay though, like what you say, like we can't prove, like you're right that like we can't prove. This is more a discussion about what should we believe, and we're saying let's be as skeptical as possible because we can't prove anything. And like, so when we say, well, let's take this, should we take this step and say the physical stuff we're measuring is actually what reality is? We just think the answer to that question is it's an unnecessary step, mostly because you can still explain the world completely without it. If you couldn't explain the world without it, then maybe it's necessary, right? To be like less parsimonious. But since we don't need it, and it's not parsimonious, I mean, and it leads to like incoherent things like the hard problem, then I think that there's just no good reason to do it. It's a belief, and it limits like what we, the way that we think about the world. Like back when it was religious belief, when this was happening, right? Like when the clergy wouldn't look in Galileo's telescope because they already know what's in the heavens. This is a problem for science. And so like, let's not put any beliefs into that sort of limit what we might look into in science because we think we already know the answer,
Yeah, I think so. And plus, what alternative do we have? Like, if there are alternative realities and a reality that we could and there's a reality that we can never interface ever, that means it will always be an assumption. And so how do we? But how do we arrive at a conclusion, right? How do we arrive at a conclusion to refer to something that we can never interact with? And is it even useful to do that? Yeah.
It's a really good. In some sense, you make an assumption either way. I don't really grant this, but we can use it for the purposes of like a thought experiment. So you either assume that the world is physical, or you assume that the world is the same essence as you, which is mind. It's where you start. It's where you begin constructing an epistemology, right? You can't start in anything other than mind. You have to work through the lens of mind to get anywhere. So then when we encounter this external reality, like what is it? Like we know that we're not directly interfacing with it. So if I assume it's physical, what kind of problems do I run into? Or if I assume that it's mental, what kind of problems, logical problems do I run into? Can I recover all the data? Can I still have the sciences? Because we don't want to get rid of those, right? And the answer is, if I assume that it's all mental, I don't run into.
You're going to need medical help for thinking it's all mental.
Yeah. I don't run into.
Taking the psych ward.
Yeah. I need a mental health assessment. I don't run into any logical issues. going that direction. We can recover the sciences. We can, in some regard, explain how the appearance of the physical world crops up within our perceptions. Like all of that
There's
is
even
perfect.
and even explain the science, the empirical results from science, like in a more complete way, because there's not quote spooky action at a distance anymore, and there's not weird things that happen with non-correlation between brain states and experience. So like there's data from science that makes more sense under an idealist ontology, and there's data from science that doesn't really make sense under a physicalist ontology, which is an indication it's not really empirically adequate. But like regardless of that, let's say that even they were even, like it just makes sense to like not have beliefs we don't need.
Yeah, I agree with that. So so if we say we shouldn't have beliefs that we don't need, isn't an alternate reality, wouldn't you say that's one of those beliefs? Since how do we deal with an alternate or
I'm not talking about an alternate reality though. Like I'm talking about this reality here, like this thing we call the physical reality. I'm just saying that we're calling it physical when it's actually mental. And so how we think about it, like we're not talking about some different realm or something like that. It's like this stuff, the thing that's in front of me that I call a thing is actually just a mental state that I'm interacting with through sense perception. So it's still the same, like it's just that it's not thought of as this objective physical thing that that exists outside of my perception of it. That's all.
So if I understand what you're saying reality is more mental than it is a real objective physical reality.
Yeah, I'm saying that it's not an objective physical reality at all, that it's a subjective mental reality, but that doesn't mean that it's like my mind or your mind. Like it unfolds just like the laws of physics describe, right? Like it's not like there's a human mind out there or something. Like it's that it's just mental in nature. And the physical comes about by the fact that we have evolved sense perceptions to navigate this mental reality in a way that keeps us alive through evolution, just as evolution describes, right? And so none of it is like, this is a naturalist view. It's not like some sort of religious view or God, there's no supernatural stuff going on here. It's just naturally mental. And we mistake it for physical because it seems to be that way. And I'd admit, it does seem to be that way. Obviously, like just naively, it seems like there's a you separate from everything and you have this position where you can inspect it objectively. But like that is like, things aren't always just as they seem to be, In fact, almost never are they as they seem to be. At one time, the earth seemed to be flat. And whatever, like lots of things sort of go down. And anyway, all I'm saying is that to assume that there's an objective physical reality outside of what we can measure is to make an assumption. That's all.
So does that mean that when we said that the Earth was flat, who lied? Was it
nobody lied? That's how it seemed to be to us, right? That was our best guess based on the data we had, right?
But they were convinced.
But now we have more data, like about the physical world, to know that it doesn't really make sense. Like at one time, we thought it was like little billiard balls, right? And we know that's not true, and we like keep kind of going down, and then it becomes this idea that it's even actually this physical, objective stuff that's separate from our measurement seems to be wrong.
But why would consciousness give that information to the brain for us to perceive that it was flat? Why would the consciousness do that?
No, the consciousness isn't doing something, like in a sense, like you're treating it sort of like it's a god or something, right? Like it's just that we evolved, right? What we are, just like science says, right, is this like evolved species that like gained higher and higher level mental functions as a way to survive, and we eventually figured out that what the Earth is in terms of how it appears to us, and we developed tools to do that, and like we were able to come to a new answer, right? But all I was meaning with that point was that like we're very naive if we think that we've reached the final conclusion about things, and in 1,000 years we're not going to be like, oh, that was really dumb,
When was the last time you interacted with your consciousness?
I mean, you're always interacting with consciousness, right? It's the only way with which you interact with the world.
Mm. But
Anything that
wrong.
is said to be existing, right, exists in consciousness. Otherwise, you know,
Yeah,
it's
but
not,
I might be wrong, right?
Otherwise, you wouldn't be conscious of it.
Is it ever wrong?
Your perception,
Yeah.
of course.
Your perception's all like often wrong, like what we actually see
Who
versus,
determines
you
what
know.
is right and wrong then?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because if it depends on your theory of truth. You sent me down there. 'Cause I kind of knew you were going there. But I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. All I can say is that it just depends on your theory of truth, right? There's like the correspondence theory, which means if I say something like there is a cat on a mat, it's only true if there's an actual cat on an actual mat in the objective world. But then there's no, that's correspondence theory. Sorry, I said that wrong. But then there's a coherence theory, which means like I could say something like Harry Potter was a wizard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, but within a limited framework. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have an answer to your question, but you would just have to go and figure out what you mean by truth.
Yeah, because now if we leave it up to whatever, and remember this goes back to Stash me asking you what your ideal civilization will look like, you would have to like explain that. Like,
I mean, I think we shouldn't believe things that we have no reason to believe in. So I think we should, ideally, people would not be gullible and just like kind of believe things if they don't know them to be reasonable. And like, I think that I would just say that like with religion, we did this where it's like, oh, let's just believe in this story that's being told on authority, right?
Mhm.
And this has disastrous consequences. And in physicalism, we're doing something similar. We're not doing it based on authority. We're more doing it based on a sort of naive realism. And look, it's not like I totally get why people do this. Like it does appear to be the case that that's how reality is. But I would just say like, ideally everyone would be like thinking about this stuff and then not just believing things without really looking at why they believe them. And then if people don't have beliefs that are like just not justified, then I think generally that will lead to lower suffering.
If you observe someone having a heart attack, are they having a heart attack? Like how
Yeah. They're experiencing
What
a heart attack, right?
But you're saying that we can get out of that mindset because it's all in the mind.
No, I don't. No. You're not getting out of the mindset that like you are still a person, like and appear to be a person. I'm just saying it's not ultimately what the truth is. Like just like you're not a dream. Like if this was a dream, and like insofar as you are in the dream, like you're going to experience whatever's happening, right, in that dream. And so like that's a real experience. I'm not denying that at all.
You're saying that if we understood consciousness being outside of the brain, then we can have some form of control over our lives, correct?
Not. I think control is not the right word.
Okay.
You can see your life in the right perspective as to not add unnecessary suffering on top of what you're already going to suffer by going through life.
To some extent, isn't that beyond our control?
All we can control is like the way. Yeah, what happens to you in this life is definitely beyond your control, right? Like I can't stop what's gonna happen, but my worrying about it is in my control. And like part of the reason I worry about it so much is because I think this is all so serious. This life is my only life that I have, and like I better protect it. And like it's all as serious as a heart attack, you know. But if you know that it's like actually not that serious, like it allows for you to actually behave in life in a way that is causing yourself less suffering.
So, like, to put simply what he's saying, because Captain might not have any clue what you mean by that without context. Like, if everything is consciousness, then Stash is something that consciousness is doing. It's not that Stash has consciousness, it's that consciousness has Stash. And so therefore Stash is just a character in a video game. I mean, like, to put it like really lightly.
I care about the character very much, but like I don't care as much as if I thought it's all that I was, you know, is this character. And that doesn't mean you don't care about your life and you don't like Ajo brought up like, well, wait, no one would strive after anything and we would lose our economics or we would lose our physical comforts that we like need because we're the human, you know, ego is kind of like driven this way to survive and that helps us develop. It's all true. It does. We need that stuff. And that all still happens, and it's important to happen. But it's not as important as we think it is, and there's a definite price to pay for believing some of these things that, again, we don't know to be true. So let's just not buy into them. And all that, I'm not saying believe what we're saying about the fundamental nature of reality being mental. Just don't have beliefs. Just like with religion, you don't want to believe things just because people are saying so, or because unless you really know. It's always good to question your beliefs, right? And so I think having an open mind is important, because if you don't, then it causes suffering.
I feel like
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I feel like I'm someone who has just taken control recently, right? And then now you're saying that I need to just step out of myself and just observe my
You
life
don't.
experiences.
Like I said, maybe before, it's the right place. If you're deconstructing from religion,
Mhm.
that's a good step. And that might be what you need to do. And if physicalism and thinking about the world this way helps you do that, then that's what you should do.
Yeah, but I want to move on to the next step.
Well, okay, that's
Yeah.
why you're talking. That's why you asked me to come here today. Maybe,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
and I
yeah.
said, look into these ideas.
Those two
I'm telling
things,
you,
yeah.
it's not. I know you're worried about. Oh man, because it seems like I'm saying, you know what?
You said I'm missing out
You've
on
taken this
something.
step, but you need to go back to this religious bullshit.
No,
I'm
no, no, no,
totally
no.
not saying that.
You
Yeah.
you said I'm missing out on something, and that bothers me a lot. So that's what maybe my next step is going to be.
Well, look, in the East, right?
Yeah.
In the Eastern quote unquote religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, they talk about this, that life is suffering, and there's some escape from suffering that can happen through looking at the nature of your own mind. And it's just true that what I care about is unnecessary suffering. And especially for myself, even though being somebody who's saying, oh, I don't really even exist, I'm a dream character, first and foremost, that I can't behave correctly in the world insofar as I'm confused about who I am. And so it's all a personal thing to me. No one has to believe. I don't want, even the Buddha, who was saying stuff like this, said, please don't believe me. That would be horrible if you just believed me and then had this new philosophy. No, go look at the nature of your mind and see what you find, empirically. And anyway, I think that curiosity is good. And yes, I do think that I think landing in physicalism from religion makes total sense and is probably a step that most everybody will do and should do, and helps to do something to get distance from the trauma of religion. And then when people are ready, they should look at the new sort of paradigm and see, too. But it's a process. For anybody, like I said, I spent most of my life as a physicalist atheist without any reason to question it. And to be honest with you, I don't think without having some sort of experience, because I've had some experiences through meditation and contemplation that were basically helpful in opening my mind a little bit to think about this. Some people get that through psychedelics and other things too, but still, if you're the fact that you even want to talk about this, is most people that are real hardcore physicalists are just I know I'm right. There's no reason to even have a conversation. You're just an idiot. That's basically what they'll say. And that's very religious. It's just like a Christian that knows that they're right.
Yeah, can I ask you, Stax, are you a hard or you're soft determinist, or if you're a determinist at all?
I think that so I think that I'm basically a determinist in the sense that you are, in the same way that just like Alex said, that stash is something that the universe is doing and it's not in my control. And but I think from the point of view, people talk about free will, they're assuming there's a you that has free will. Do I think stash has free will? No. In the same way a physicalist wouldn't think so, right?
Yeah.
But I think that so I think, yeah, in terms of that, no, but I think that does the reality as a whole sort of unfathomable freedom, but it's not libertarian free will, people think they have, I don't think it's like that.
It's like freedom of movement in space vis-a-vis things can move in space, we can have different positions of a particular thing in space. There's
And
kind
like
of freedom
you
we're
should
talking
act as if you have free will, right? Like,
about.
but I don't think you actually do, right? As a separate self. Like, I don't even think there is a separate self to have the will in the first place. I think there's just like a doing of nature that I call Stash, right? And like, so like, but in the sense of what does this mean for how you live your life? Like, yeah, you should definitely try to improve and like, like act as if you have a choice, in everything.
Yeah, so I was
Okay.
gonna ask, how do we even hold you accountable and responsible for how consciousness is
Yeah,
in
you
your
should.
life?
I mean, in a way, this is a great point. The whole thing about holding people accountable, right? Like, there's actually a little bit of freedom in this, in that when people behave badly, in my view, they're doing it because they don't know that they're a video game character in the game. They take it very seriously, and whatever their conditioning was to lead them to that moment, all this like non-free will, like whatever happened to that person to cause them to be like commit a crime or attack somebody or whatever it is, right? Whatever that was, that is basically out of their control, right? That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be punished and put in jail and like all of the things that we would do, but it gives you a freedom to understand when somebody's mistreating you or that kind of thing, to see them in a sort of compassionate light of, well, they just confused. They're not like evil, they're confused,
Yeah,
and it's something that can help your mindset, not to mean that they shouldn't be held responsible for their actions.
a good example would be like cars. Sorry, Alex. So a good example would be like cars, right? No one is convinced that cars have free will, but when a car breaks down or goes into a crash, we still take it to the workshop or to the scrapyard because
Yeah.
at that point it could cause more harm, and not necessarily because it willed itself into being in a crash, but just it's not functionally, useful in society. But
Yeah,
yeah.
if you had all of my experiences exactly as I had them, you would just be me. And like same goes for like some murderer or somebody that did something, like if you had all their experiences that they had exactly as they had them throughout their lives, you would do the same thing they did, right? And so like there's a sort of, a way of seeing that's like, okay, so it's not really anybody's fault. It's just kind of how things are, and that honestly like can help a lot, especially like in personal relationships and things like that when people are yeah.
It doesn't mean that people aren't accountable for their actions, because the accountability is what cures the ignorance that led to the immoral thing or what have you. It's really interesting to think about that. Like 99% of people that do bad things are not walking around thinking they're doing bad things. Now, I don't know, you can make the argument for like a murderer or something. Maybe they know. I don't know. But like when you look at it that way, you realize that everybody like, for example, like the mustache man, right? I don't want to get your live messed up, but the guy from Germany in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, right? The mustache man. I'm sure he thought he was doing a good thing. Obviously, we think it's atrocious or whatever. Well, I don't know what y'all think, but I think it's atrocious. And so what you notice is that many of these kinds of figures throughout history are completely and utterly convinced they're doing the right thing. And it's really just it's what's the word? I don't want to say ignorance. It's delusion. Stash, you know what I'm trying to say, bro.
Yeah, you're saying they're acting out of ignorance, I mean, rather than evil, basically. But like,
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I don't think it's ignorance. I think we can determine how someone wants to live this life and experience this life. I think some people see it as worthless, and it is a decision and a choice for them to make. I think some people are very self-destructive. Like you value your life, and so you want to live this life according to the law of the United States. But there's some people who genuinely don't see it worth living, and they want to self-destruct. And I think it's perfectly fine. That's why I have this mentality of like nothing matters, and like none of this is real. Like the fact that our brains just are different, and we see things differently in terms of like morality. Like it's okay for someone to take themselves out of this reality. Like I completely get it. I understand when someone wants to take themselves out of their reality and include other people. It's messed up, but it's like it's a reality that I have to accept.
Well, definitely you can't, like, it's going to happen, but like you would still like try to prevent that happening if you
I
could
won't.
or
I
whatever.
won't. I won't.
Really,
Because then
really. So you don't
yes,
think
because then
that
I'm
like
controlling somebody's decisions or life or like whatever.
All right, let's take it to an extreme. Let's say that you're married and your husband comes home drunk and wants to kill your child, and you can stop it. You're not gonna because you don't want to interfere.
No, that's not what I mean. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm saying something that doesn't have to do with me. I'm saying somebody's messed up like the way they think. Because for me to not intervene, it's me like ignoring my natural instincts. I'm saying that some people's natural instincts would not make the same decisions that I would make.
Right. Like, so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what we were saying too, that like the conditions in their mind that led up to that event
yeah.
are out of their control, right? And so, but that still doesn't mean that we don't intervene or we don't punish people or do the things necessary to keep everybody safe. Like it's just that you can let go of, like, a lot of people would say, well, that person's evil. And we would say, no, that person's just ignorant, meaning they're a slave to their conditions.
Yeah, and not only that, right? What they're ignorant to is the capital T of all truths under our worldview, right? Not to like enforce our worldview on everybody, but like non-duality is what we're talking about. Everything is consciousness, non-duality, all is one, oneness, all this, whatever. There's all these words to refer to it. But essentially, when you know that everything is one and all people are essentially the same consciousness, the only negativity can come from delusion from that truth. In other words, I'm only the mustache man from Germany if I don't know the truth, which is that everybody's one, right? Like there's no way you would be engaging in that kind of activity if you knew that truth. So that's kind of what we're pointing to when we say out of ignorance also.
I don't care about the truth. Because that's your definition of truth. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I wish to live in a world where if I was on fire, Ajo would quench it. But I guess I came to the wrong point.
I think she would. It sounds like she I think she would.
Oh my god.
Guys, I gotta
Yeah.
go.
Thank you so much.
Before you go,
Stash.
Stash, just last question. Sorry, just last question. What are your thoughts on transhumanism, specifically with BCIs?
You're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it.
BCIs.
Look, I don't think consciousness is generated by your brain, right? So when you started with that about how you can transfer it into something else, like if our metaphysical beliefs are different, in other words, if I don't hold the physicalism and computationalism, I obviously don't think that what you're describing there is even possible, because I don't think consciousness is something you have. Like, I don't think that point of view that you represent, it literally is you. It can't be transferred to something else without destroying it, basically. So I think life is necessary for something to have a point of view. That if we point at a you or a me or a computer or a rock, like, the way that we determine whether or not it has a point of view is to see whether or not it's alive.
So you're saying we shouldn't attempt. So what are your thoughts on the successful trials of Neuralink and the likes?
I think that there's a difference between intelligence and consciousness. So, like, I think that AI is great. I think that it's a super good tool. I think that, I mean, I use it myself. I think it's awesome. I don't think there's any reason to think that it has a point of view, a subjective inner experience, because, like, again, like, if it did, it would be alive. It would look like life. Because from my point of view, what we call something with its own subjective point of view literally is life. Like, they're the same thing. And so, like, life is just what that mental process looks like. A mental process that has its own point of view will look like life, meaning it'll be alive. So anyway, we'll disagree about this, but this gets down to what we actually think the nature of reality is. And, because you think that consciousness is something that arises from complexity in the brain, or is something related to information processing in the brain or something like that, right? And, like, I just don't think that's true. So, like, therefore I have different beliefs about what can, quote, be conscious or not.
Captain, I'm going to stop you here because Tash has to go, but this is an opportunity for him to come back here. And Stash is just one of the many people that I have. So, I'm glad you guys were able to... I don't know what conclusion we got to, but I think Captain is a little bit convinced. But Captain, I'm going to give you the information that Stash gave me. we're gonna look into it, and then next time when we have a conversation with him,
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, check
Yeah,
that out
really
because it's a very organized and like better way of presenting it than I'll
Yeah.
do when I was like, kind of just going back and forth on TikTok with you. But like
Yeah.
also like look, this is a very important. Like I think it's great that we're getting away from religion. I think that there's like these are the questions of the day. Like AI is forcing this conversation a lot because everyone's wondering like how is AI conscious? How do we know or not? And so then these questions get asked like, well, wait, what is consciousness, right? Like you have on your backboard. So yeah, I'll definitely come back.
Thank you so much, Stash. We'll see you next time.
Yep. See you.
Captain.
Thanks, Captain.
Great to meet you,
Gotcha.
Stash.
Bye now.
Are you shutting down too, Joe?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Cap.
Uh,
How do you feel? Isn't he great? Aren't they great? Aren't you shook?
yeah.
Aren't you? I saw you trembling and like.
Trembling is a stretch. It's a
there
new
are times-
perspective.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
times when I could hear you thinking and like trying to take it
Yeah,
all
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
I've not. This is a very different position
You've
because
never
it's
heard
not
this before?
supernatural. I'm not particularly this in the sense of this is a non-supernatural,
Mhm.
non-reality. Because every time someone
Non-traceable,
says
non-detectable.
yes, every time someone talks about not physical reality, they're usually talking about supernatural. So
Absolutely.
to hear this position is different, even though I don't agree with it.
Me either.
Right.
I'm still like because
Yeah.
next time what I want to do is I want to give him like actual scenarios, but he's only like even if I give him like I try to give him the whole heart attack thing, right? Like he's still gonna tell me that, like is it like it's just happening in my mind. So it's like I feel like all my answers is gonna go back to it happening in my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to say that the reality of the Earth being a planet in the solar system is a mental state.
It's a mental
I
state.
don't know that I'm
It
not
kind
there
of
yet.
is though,
Yeah.
because okay, so like if a tree fell and there was nobody to hear it, did it fall? That's kind of how it is. Like human beings need to perceive it. So like I guess I get what he's saying, right? Like did a tree fall?
There
if
needs to
nobody
be
was
some
there
form of
to hear it?
perception.
Hmm?
Yeah, but like there's no way to think about the alternative. Like, can we
Mhm.
think of any kind of existence that cannot be perceived?
So then,
Like even on the yeah,
no, I'm trying to see
even on a
this
theoretical
and other
level,
we
how
always.
will we
So
get
do unicorns exist?
in our mind? Yes, it exists because you can even have an animation, right? Yeah, you can make a movie. You can build a statue of a unicorn. So that metadata exists somewhere in a mind as software because it can be described.
I'm curious to see their opinions on like the multiverse, like if everything is happening.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, we gotta note it down.
Yeah. But so you said you're trying to go to the next level. What is the next level?
Wherever they are. Because I did ask him. I did ask him that
You're
like
just
me
being a
being
diplomat.
very like
Okay.
evidence based, and they not. It's not like they're not evidence based because I do believe in science, but it's like how are they like he said that I'm missing out on something, and I want to know what I'm missing out on. Being that like whatever theory this is, if they're experiencing life or they are handling trauma, pain, happiness in a different way because of the way that they think, and I'm not, that's what I want to see if I can apply that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So you're being a diplomat because this is where it's not so much different from religion, and I would say maybe superstition as well, because that's how it's being sold. It's like, oh, there's either an afterlife, you need to pay afterlife insurance premiums, or there's this feeling of nirvana that we can get you to from doing this, insurance premiums, or there's this feeling of nirvana that we can get you to from doing this. What was that? Is that your alarm?
Yeah, I think they said life disconnected or something. I don't know. Anyway, Captain, I think next week we're gonna do something really chill. But I wanted them to come to X. I feel like with X they'll get a lot more like questions.
More people probably,
yeah.
Because this is the kind of question that attracts people. Yeah.
And I thought Tara had some time. I think Tara would have taken this
He
conversation
left.
less
Yeah, that's
because you
true.
know where he's coming from, and I'll be curious to see how they interact. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like because we think that they are like one step behind like a god complex, and then so we'll see like comparing Tara's argument to their argument, and then like we can sit back and sort of observe and see how similar or how different they are.
True. That would be a good thing to observe.
To observe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But to see the
Mhm.
interactions that we have, I feel like is really. I mean, one would say it's a mental state, but it's like the fact that I can talk and you can process what I'm saying
Mhm.
and interact. It's just too vivid to just be a mental state. I don't know how to
Yeah,
put this.
it's like how is that happening?
Yeah.
Like how is the consciousness happening in real time? Because science
Mhm.
is just explaining what has already existed or what is sort of in the past.
Mhm.
So what about
Yeah.
the now? Like it's like
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
okay,
True.
so in conclusion, do you think that consciousness is in the brain, or do you still think it's inside of the brain, or do you now feel like it could be outside of it?
I think the human consciousness, because I think there are various forms of consciousness, right? There's a consciousness of an ant. There's a consciousness of a a plant, right? But the human consciousness is fairly distributed, around the nervous system. But the critical point, uh, once the brain stem stops functioning, we've observed that human beings cannot respond at that point. Um, and because we can tell the other ways we can tell consciousness is the way we interact, right? Is oh yeah, a being is conscious. When we say someone is conscious, that consciousness is largely a product of how they're interacting in the environment, right? It's the things they're doing, the things you're saying, um, and all of this we even it has been mapped in the brain where these different functions uh that they're functional, the responsibility exists in the brain, because at points where you want to either treat someone, right,
Mhm.
or enhance, we find out that it's from manipulating the brain that we get the desired kind of results.
Yeah, but the consciousness has to
So
present that to
yeah,
you for you to do that. The consciousness have to get it from
true.
somewhere and put it in the brain, and for you to connect, fix it. I think that's what you're saying. It has to come
Yeah,
from somewhere
that's another
into
individual.
the physical brain, and it's something that the
So
science cannot track.
no, is that somewhere. So that's the somewhere that I don't know how to isolate to separate that somewhere from
Somewhere.
it just being uh-huh.
It is.
So it's so how to put this, like as a magnet, right? Um the magnetic property of a magnet is a function of what the magnet is in terms of the material of what the magnet is in terms of the material. That's still somewhere.
Yeah. Like you said, we need to learn more.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the next space is gonna be. Next week is gonna be like something chill, and then we're gonna because
Yeah.
we need to sleep on it. I asked him to define what life is, and I asked him to define what
Mhm.
consciousness is. And when I described that stones and rocks all have consciousness, because I define life or
Yeah.
consciousness to be something that interacts with its environment. Then he's like, oh, he cannot accept that definition because what I'm doing is I'm redefining what life is to include rocks and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like
Um
interesting
and yeah,
because he only thinks that it's only animals and human beings that have consciousness, and I brought up non-living things, and he
I
disagreed.
see. Yeah, it's good. I'm hearing all of these different parts. So the next conversation, I kind of know. Well,
Yeah,
and you say
bring in the non-living
he shared
things.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay, appreciate it. Yeah.
So good.
Thanks for hosting, and I like this kind of topics.
I
So
knew you would. Next time we'll have Van here, and then we'll have Tara. It's gonna be so good.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good
Um.
Sunday.
Sure. How was your week though?
My weekend was chill. My week was hectic. This week is going to be Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. The week coming up.
Okay.
We're gonna be doing some Thanksgiving at my workplace, and that's really it for May. Oh, it's Thanksgiving in 2 weeks. I think Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks. Oh, so we're just a little early. What about you?
Yeah. It's so far so good. Made some progress on different fronts. What
Oh,
a building.
jeez Louise. Sorry. Move.
It's all good.
Shout outs to everyone who joined the live. Thanks for all the participation, the likes, the hearts, the comments. So good. Thanks, Fox or FCOX. Shout outs to everybody who joined the space. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.